it's nice to be here. It is. And let me just share a couple thoughts, and we'll take some nice to see all of you as well. And I know it was a late night for those of you that were here. Congratulations, Greg, on a nice award. And the rain was something else coming in. I didn't know if I needed a bridge or a pontoon to cross the river coming over on the 14th Street Bridge. A couple of things. As was indicated, I've always been bipartisan. I changed the rules of our committee when I became chairman, and Greg kept the same rules, and so has Frank. Bipartisan amendments go first. I wish the margin was a little bit different. We sort of know how many people are on our committee. 32 on this vote. The vote was 32 to 26. As we saw, nearly 70 amendments, I think.
There were several. HR 3, that number was not like that.
29, yeah. But we've had a busy time, but let's face it, it's a crazy time. It really is. And it's really, between COVID and everything else, I mean, it's been a pretty toxic time as well. And as I look back on the things that I've worked on in healthcare, it was Newt Gingrich actually tapped my shoulder back in the 90s to be the Republican lead on doubling the money for the NIH, something that was so important. And I still have a picture of John McCain and myself. He was the Republican lead in the Senate, along with Paul Wellstone and Henry Waxman, with my constituent, Muhammad Ali. Tiffany was on my team then, right? And Ali lived about 10 miles south of me, and he was a good guy, that is for sure. And he cared a lot about health research and Parkinson's and all those different things. And we used him to promote our bill, and it happened for the NIH. I look now at COVID, and of course it was 21st Century Cures, something that our committee voted on 53 to nothing. Diana DeGette and I were the two leads on that, but everybody was a huge participant. We had dozens of roundtables and hearings and trips around the country, whether it be to MD Anderson or University of Michigan, Washington State, Oregon. Every member participated, and it was an amazing bill, 392 to 26 on the House floor. We survived the filibuster that was led by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in the Senate. We got 75 votes. Even Schumer voted against it. He voted against proceeding, but we won, and we won 92 to 8 on the House floor. And that bill is really the benchmark for what we're trying to do now on Cures 2.0. And when you think about Cures and what it did, just so happens that Pfizer's my largest employer. And it just so happens that they produce the vaccine at my facility in Kalamazoo. It's actually in Portage, literally at the end of the runway. I was there about 3 weeks ago, getting a first-hand look at the production and what they're doing. And, this has to be put into freezers that are 70 degrees centigrade below zero. And each freezer, they're a little larger than your Whirlpool freezer that you might have at your home. But they're not all that much bigger. They're about this big. And each freezer will hold 350,000 doses. And when they stock them, they have a 4-man team that's literally, and they've done this a routine. I mean, they can load that 350,000 doses to put in there within a minute and a half. And they have a stopwatch. I mean, that's what the FDA requires for it to be out. And they're ice packed, dry ice packed, and they fit just perfectly into these freezers. And the day that I was there, they were actually sending it to Rwanda. And it was going to be I was there on a Monday, and then we're going to be in Rwanda by Wednesday or Thursday, doses for folks that were there. But the story that I'm going to tell is, so this thing came, first started learning about it in December of 19. Shut down here I was actually with Greg Walden. We were off to ski together in March. And I was pulling my luggage out of the overhead bin with Amy, and Greg called and said, "By the way, did you know they just closed the ski slopes beginning tomorrow?" And oh my goodness, I just made the decision to run again, and now I'm in Utah. we're out of here, Amy. We're on our first flight out to go back to Michigan, and we had a vaccine that was approved in December. And the approval really came because of what we did on cures to expedite the approval of drugs and devices. It allowed for the EUAs, the Emergency Use Authorization. And it allowed Pfizer and J&J and Moderna to actually produce the vaccine before it was approved. So that when it was approved in December of 20, literally they started shipping it out the very next day out of Kalamazoo. It was incredible. And you can say then that we saved millions of lives, hundreds of thousands of lives. Debbie and I were on the mall earlier this week. If you've been by on Constitution Avenue, every day they put up the number of deaths. They have little white flags. It was actually the picture of the day. Did you see that yesterday? Roll call or the Hill. They have every day they put up a new couple thousand flags of the people that died between yesterday and today. There are 670,000 flags on the mall. It's an incredible thing. I mean, you're standing on Constitution, and it's just a wave, all the way up to the Washington Monument, and then some. It's beyond what your eye can see. And in the front of it, there's a little section of 27 flags. So it's about as big as this table, these little white flags. That's how many people have died in New Zealand. 27 people. And then they have a little larger space. Obviously, the U.S. is 67 times larger than New Zealand. So they have a little larger space. It's maybe from here to the wall of 67 times 27 to represent what could have been in the U.S. had we taken all the different precautions against the backdrop of 670,000 flags that are there. So Debbie and I, we know some people that died of COVID. For me, I put the first person that I knew, Vietnam vet. So I put Bud Baker's name on it. And we both put on our Facebook page, if we got a constituent, you want your individual's name to be put on, let us know, because we're going back next week to do it again. So I came in, so that was Tuesday. So yesterday I came in early, as I usually do, and Ratner and others left a whole bunch of stuff on my chair. I don't have an inbox anymore because it's overflowing. But so on the chair, there's one of my state reps. His dad died. So I do a little note. And I didn't know his dad, but this guy was pretty good. He actually represented the Kalamazoo Pfizer facility. So I wrote a nice note to him, and then I read the obit, which was attached of his dad. He died of COVID. So I'll put his name with others this next week. But that's what Cures did. It took us 3 years to get it done. Lots of hearings. I actually recessed the markup at one point just because a couple little issues, and I didn't want a divided vote on this thing, and so we recessed, which had never happened before. Can you imagine Pallone or Walden recessing a markup full committee? No. But it worked, and it worked. So, but that was a 3-year effort. So now, DeGette and I have been working on version 2.0, really since, Obama signed it into law in 2016. So we started working probably in 2018 on 2.0. And we've learned a lot. Learned that, the trials ought to be more diverse, and that's going to happen. And actually, that was one of the faults that we had with the COVID vaccine, was that particularly people of color didn't feel that they were well represented, and therefore they were very leery. And we're still not over that. And that needs to change, particularly when you have these trials of 30-some thousand people that are still there. We kept all the safety precautions. Telemedicine. We've all talked about it. We got so many different areas of the country that don't have broadband, but I can, as we all do our Zooms, I can remember one of the meetings that I had last year with a physician group, and the doctor said, "Oh, I'm so glad that I get to see my patients online because the last place I want them to come to is here in the Bronx, where it's a real hot spot, not only for them but for me. And she said, you know, you guys got to do more. I mean, whether it's food reservations or, you know, just about anything, we gotta have that. And so telemedicine, you know, my dad had a little TIA or something the last 2 weeks. He's had a number of them. So I took him to the hospital last week. It's actually during the markup. And of course, WebEx that's like the worst. I don't know if you guys watch it or not, but I mean, it is the worst. And I'm in Michigan. Debbie was here. I could tell. I can always tell Debbie's background, you know, her office or whatever, because we'll all do this so many times. So I'm taking my dad to the hospital. He went in the ambulance. I followed it. And so he's there. He's 97. And I set up for this markup, and it doesn't work in the hospital. You know, I'm in the ER. I can't exactly wander around and find the right spot. It's a big hospital. And the rat nurse panicked. What's going on? I said, and he called, my phone works, but my iPad doesn't work. And so he started having these roll call votes. And he should have done the vote the day before. So I call Kathy, CMR, I call her, and on FaceTime, she sees, I said, you know, I can't get this thing, it's not connecting. So she takes the phone, my FaceTime, from the chair on the dais, and then walks down to the clerk, and they see me say, Upton votes aye. And so they logged it in. I did that a number of times before I could get out of the hospital and actually have it work when I got home. Telehealth needs to be a big part of this, and so we have that in this bill. But we take a number of improvements. We wanted to, frankly, to have it introduced by today, which maybe is why Jim asked me to come speak today. But Ledge Council's been a little busy the last 2 weeks as they try to work on these infrastructure bills. But we're hoping that we can actually introduce it next week. The last thing that I'll say is ARPA-H. This is going to be a big element of what we're doing. ARPA-H really duplicates what DARPA has done for the Defense Department and energy as well. And the President talked a lot about this in his State of the Union or address to the Congress earlier this year. The appropriators have $3 billion already into this bill, so we're going to do the authorizing part. We want to make sure that it's independent, that it's able to have the nimbleness and flexibility to really identify drugs and devices that might go outside of the scope of the normal bureaucratic delays or rigmarole to get things approved. And we're excited to get it done, and we expect it to be a big part of the bill that we introduce as early as maybe next week, whenever these ledge guys can get back together. But and our goal is to get it to the President before the end of the year. So with that, I yield to my friend Debbie Dingell.
Which bill are you introducing? You talked about it, but you weren't clear.
Cures 2.0.
That's what I wanted to hear. I thought you might have missed that because I did. Good morning, everybody. And it's I always love being with Fred. Fred is one of my best friends. They've even accepted it on the Democratic side. I called Fred and I said, oh God.
I have this on camera.
Okay, so I won't get in trouble again. I won't tell you what I did last week, and I called Fred and said, I hope I didn't get you in trouble. So I won't do it on camera again. I'll tell you off camera. But Fred and I work on a lot of healthcare issues together. We work on a lot of issues together. You know, I'm somebody, I think we all need to look at what Ken Burns said this week, where he talked about this country's as divided as we were when we had the Civil War. And I really worry about what's happening. I think the fundamental pillars of our democracy are being attacked. I think simple common sense has become the most controversial. I do wear my mask, as you can tell. I wear now he's going to go get it. I just do it because I stayed home like everybody else did last year, and it is good to be out and talking to people and listening. And I'm vaccinated. I was scared to get vaccinated. Fred tried to get me to go with him. Took a little longer. I had Gans beret from a flu shot. So I understand people's fear. but I'm also really glad I got it and I wear my mask. And I think there are a lot more areas of agreement than people realize on healthcare. And I think there's some big areas that we got to find some solutions to and bring people together on that there aren't. I guess I'll start with the big ones that I'll never get Fred to agree with me on, but I still think we need to address in this country, which is...
Smiling.
Well, I'm a Dingell, okay? We got to all remember that John Dingell's father was the author of Social Security. He introduced universal health care in the early 40s. I told you he would not. And I just think every American's got a right to health care. That when you get sick, you should be able to go to the doctor. You shouldn't have to worry if you can afford it, and you shouldn't have to worry if you can afford the medicine. I have too many people tell me, I have a lump in my breast, but there's no point in going because I can't afford the treatment. That just really bothers me. So it is something that makes me tick, and I still think we gotta figure out answers, and we'll keep working it through. We continue to have needless fights over affordable care. We may be finally getting to a point where that's in the rear view mirror. And the other area of disagreement, but it's not only members, period, Republicans and Democrats have I wish we could have more thoughtful discussions about how can people afford their medicine? How do we make sure that people have the money that they need for the R&D that they need, but how do you make sure people can afford their medicine? And everybody uses insulin as one of the examples, but I use the inhaler. We've got so many children that have asthma, and there's one, I have about 10 of them because I use them as a mother got up at a town hall meeting, and, she's living at the poverty line. She's working 2 jobs. There are a lot of people that work and don't, they're not paid a lot. And that inhaler is $800 a month. And, that's a major issue. So how do we, and she talked about that at the town hall meeting, which then made me fixate on it. And I went to some of the clinics that are helping people, and it's a real issue. So that bothers me. But there are a lot of problems that we can solve. I did, when I got elected, I started working with Fred on cures. We did a lot of things together. He's working with Diana on the next version that they're going to introduce. But we've done some very pointed things. One of the biggest, long-term care is something that I care deeply about. And both Fred and I, Fred's parents are still alive. My mother, our parents were both in the hospital, not together, but went into the hospital, had episodes last week. And we care about our parents, and we're trying to make sure they're okay. And John Dingell was the most important part of my life. I miss him every single day. His brain was there. He was dictating to me the hour that he died. But I learned a lot about healthcare and how broken and fragmented the system is. And just trying to get, the fight I had after, Fred remembers this because he was right there with me. John went in, Greg does too. John went in the hospital that morning after he finished his last day of service in the house, and the doctor said to me, he may have lost his will to live. He finished his last work last night. That was one of the scariest moments in my life. But so that was my first, he lived for another 4 years, but the fights I would have with Medicare and the insurance company about who's the primary carer. And, I spent 14 hours of pushing buttons and knocking my head against the wall, and I finally called my congresswoman. But imagine, I didn't want to play that card, but I finally just had it. And so somebody like me, who supposedly knows how to make a system work, it's really broken. Medicaid is the largest payer of long-term care in this country, and it's totally geared at institutional settings. One of the things that we've got a couple of bills that we've worked on, but spousal impoverishment. Most people, you do not know how broken the system is or what the system is until you're in it. So Medicaid requires that you have no assets. So you have a married couple, you've got a spouse that's got Alzheimer's, or a spouse that's got really serious cancer, or a spouse that needs help and needs to be in assisted living or needs help. And the spouse has to lose all of their assets. You have to sell your home to be able to even afford to take care of your spouse. That's not right. It's not right. So we have the spousal impoverishment bill that we have managed to get. Greg was chair when I wish we could make it permanent, but Republicans and Democrats work together to try to prevent a spouse from having to become impoverished. And then we do Follow the Money program, which has been another for helping people that has been bipartisan. We all saw how broken the PPE was, and that the national emergency supply was a disaster, and I don't know who to blame. I wouldn't blame. I just think the executive branch was totally unprepared and under more than one administration. And Jackie and I, introduced legislation that's been included, and we've gotten it through that make sure that we are more prepared and have supplies that isn't expired. And we have to strengthen our supply chain. I don't think there's total agreement on that. Fred talked about telehealth. Liz Cheney and I have introduced a bill that I'm going to work very hard to get Frank. I need help. I want to get Frank to try to move that so people can see her doing good work. And Bob Latta, you talk about telehealth. I'm about to break the law today, I think. It's ridiculous that doctors can't. So we've got Michigan. There are a lot of doctors at Michigan that have patients in Toledo or, Ohio, and you're not allowed to right now to practice telehealth across state lines. So the doctors at Michigan are saying this is really hard. I eat terribly. I admit this. So my internist has been ketchup's my vegetable.
I went to her house, but while John was still alive, and I opened up the Whirlpool refrigerator, and it was filled with Jell-O.
That was John's. But he's been trying to get me to go to a dietitian. I don't want anybody to think this is going to work. But I canceled it Monday for some reason. They rescheduled it for today, like they're determined. But it's breaking the law because it's going to be telehealth. And I'm here, and she's at Michigan. This is just insane, and it's stupid, and don't tell anybody I'm breaking the law today. But that's the kind of stuff we got to work together to make the healthcare system simpler. So I think the big issues one of the things that I have seen in my years, I say I'm not old, but I'm seasoned. And Fred was born the same year I was, but he's older. Every day he's older. But people used to talk to each other. You used to hear different perspectives. Hearings, I've heard John talk about, he talked about the day the guy just brought in lungs. Not even you've heard the story. Brought in lungs showing what happened on cancer to a set of lungs that he didn't even have it in a glass jar. I don't think you were there, but it was disgusting to even hear the story. But everybody paid attention. In hearings weren't, I used to watch some of these hearings. They weren't gotcha moments. They were educational moments. People used them to learn, to listen, to hear other perspectives. And I think we got to figure out a way to get back to this. Everything's a gotcha moment these days. And we're even, last week's markup in energy and commerce was a nightmare. By the way, it's not just his hospital. Canon's technology doesn't work either. It doesn't, he called me and said, I was still not going to committee, and we were doing PFAS together. And Fred was like, get out of that office and get over here. They can't hear you. You're breaking up. And I got out of my office and came and listened. So even the Hill has terrible technology. Not even, it's really sad that the home of the United States government has such bad technology. But I think we've got to find a way, because there really are problems, and I don't care, they're not Republican problems, they're Democratic problems. We all have constituents that need to be able to go to the doctor. We want people to be able to get their medicine. We want people to live a long time. We want to take care of children. We want to take care of seniors. So I just keep working together. Fred, I'm looking at Mark. Mark and Kevin have a heart attack, or Joan and Dan. When Fred and Debbie talked again at midnight last night, oh Lord, what are they doing now? Notice the look on Mark's face. It always terrifies us. They don't like Fred and I unsupervised. But we are unsupervised a lot. So, that's kind of the healthcare stuff, and I think we should try to work together more, not less, because I think there are a lot of problems that need to be solved and need to not be the latest tweet of gotcha. So I think we should stop there and see what they want to talk about.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much.